Wolf Wilder by Katherine Rundell, Chapter 4. The next day was a day of discoveries. Theo discovered two things: that the wolf was not fat, and that the world was not safe. Theo was running through the wood, one hand on Tenderfoot's neck, looking out for squirrels. They saw a jackdaw poking hopefully in the snow. "That's food, Tenderfoot! Food! Quick!" Several things happened at once. The wolf gave a howl of terror at the sight of the bird. The side of her belly moved and pulsed, and a person fell out of a tree, pointed a pistol at Theo's head and said, "Put your hands where I can see them." Theo jerked to a stop. Very slowly, so slowly she hoped that he would not notice she was moving, she inched to stand in front of the wolf. "Hands up!" Theo put her hands up. "Who are you?" An unfamiliar dizzy panic swept over her. She tried to shove the wolf's great bulk behind her knees, out of sight. "I'm a soldier in the Imperial Army." Theo swallowed. Terror bleached right through her, and she lowered one hand to take hold of Tenderfoot's neck, just in case she tried to run near that gun. "Don't move, Labushka," she whispered. "Stay." "Both hands up," said the soldier. "If you try to shoot her," Theo said, "I'll kill you." "Will you?" said the soldier. He came a step closer, gun outstretched. "I don't see how." "I will. Get back. I swear I'll bite you." The soldier stopped, his face astonished. Theo breathed in. "If you come a step closer, I'll pull your fingers out." The soldier looked interested, despite himself. "Could you actually do that?" His face, twisted in curiosity, looked younger than she had expected. "Yes," lied Theo. And then, "Probably, actually, if you stayed still." She stepped forward. He didn't move. Her hands were shaking, so she hid them behind her back. "I mean it, though. Don't point that at us." He still didn't move. "Mama says pointing a gun is a failure of imagination." She gestured with her elbow at Tenderfoot. "And I have a wolf." "I know. I've been watching." The soldier picked some pine needles from his uniform and brushed the snow from his hair. His voice was too high for an adult's, she thought. A boy's voice. "She's not noticeably fierce, is she?" Theo was surprised by how annoyed she felt. "She's much better than yesterday already. Yesterday you wouldn't have been surprised if she'd started knitting. And besides," she added, speaking the thing she had just realised, "she's pregnant. You can't shoot a pregnant wolf. You can't kill something before it's had a chance to try out life." "I have to." The boy rubbed his arms. He was tall and fair, and without the covering of snow, he looked very thin. The bones in his hands seemed to be making a bid to escape from his skin. His voice sounded of cities. Soft, Theo thought. He didn't look very soldierly. "It's unfortunate, but there's nothing I can do. Rules have to be followed." "No, they don't." Theo risked another step towards him. "Please, really, they don't." "They'll punish me if I don't." "Well, I'll wolf you if you do." But she sounded only slightly less frightened than she felt. She kept one hand on Tenderfoot. The boy shook his head. "I'm the one with the gun here. One gun beats one wolf." That was so obviously true that Theo could do nothing but scowl. "Who'll punish you, though?" Theo thought she might know. "General Rakov?" "Don't say that so loud." The boy looked around as if expecting Rakov to spring out from behind a squirrel. "Yes, him." "What does he do?" "He doesn't do much personally. Not usually. But he likes to watch." "Oh," said Theo. There was something terrible in the boy's voice, She hadn't realised it was possible to fit so much fear into so few words. He makes his officers bring us to his study. I bled for 3 days once. The boy twitched his shoulders as if shaking something off. Look, I have to shoot the wolf. It doesn't matter if I want to. You don't understand. There are 6 of us on watch, and if I don't catch you, someone else will. What? Theo stared around the clearing. The air was still. Where? She should have brought more than one knife, she thought. It was a stupid mistake. Not here. We're spaced over 20 miles. Anyone wolf-wilding is to be arrested, Rakov said. Wolves are to be shot. Those were the orders. I wasn't wilding. I was just playing. You don't look the sort of person who just plays. As he said it, there was a rustle of branches far off. The boy called out, a short, sharp shriek, quickly stifled, and Theo saw Black's back as he streaked amongst the trees, heading towards her. Oh no, Theo whispered the strongest of the swear words she had learnt from the driver the day before. Is that... Go, Black, she called. She pointed away towards the chapel, but the wolf kept coming. Black, please go, he's got a gun. The boy raised his pistol. No, said Theo, go back. She couldn't move from Tenderfoot's side, but she spat at the boy. He jumped back, but only a step, not enough. Listen, if you shoot him, I'll find where you sleep and come after you in the night. The boy's eyes were widening. I will, that's not a joke. Black erupted from the trees, growling. The boy cried out. Theo threw herself over Tenderfoot's belly and screwed her eyes shut, but the pistol did not fire. She opened them. The boy stood where he was, frozen. The pistol in his hand was shaking. Black slid to a halt in the snow and rested his head against Theo's thigh. He must have picked up the tension, the shiver in her skin, because another growl came from his throat. Oh dear, said Theo. What's going on? Asked the boy. He doesn't like you. Why not? Because I don't like you, and he can feel it. Well, stop it. Disliking you? Yes, now. Stop it immediately. You very much started it. You're pointing a gun at me. I order you to control that wolf. I can't. That's the point. He might do what I ask, but he might not. He's not a pet. She shouted the final word, and Black growled again. The sound shook snow from the trees above them. The boy, Theo saw, was shaking like a whole forest of leaves. Don't let it come nearer. Put your gun down then. Theo decided to risk it. She turned her back on him and knelt in the snow. Hush, all right? She put a hand on the 2 sides of Black's face and breathed warm air onto his nose. We're all right, Chenny. There's no need to eat anybody today. She glanced around at the boy. He was standing with his fists balled tight, but his gun was in the snow. I'll let you know if that changes, she said to Black. The wolf wouldn't understand the words, but the sound, the softness, a whisper, reassured him, and the hackles along his back dropped down. There was the sound of a throat being ostentatiously cleared. So, what now? Said the boy. Now you swear never to tell anyone you saw us, said Theo. She tried to put toughness and growl into her voice. Unless you want to find a wolf under your bed, eating your toes. Look, I'm supposed to arrest you, he said. If they find out what I saw and didn't take you, they'd... What? What would they do? Honestly, you don't want to know what they'd do. No, I do. A bit. You don't. They always say the Russian army wasn't built on compliments and milk. I have to arrest you, all right? I'm going to, right now. Are you ready? He drew himself up to his full height, which was at least a foot taller than Theo. Theo looked hard at him, at the way he stood, at the skin around his eyes and on his wrists. Wrist skin is very revealing of many things. You're the same age as me. I'm not. I'm 13, nearly 14. That's still not old enough to arrest anybody. I'm supposed to call the others. I have a whistle. Here. He gestured to the inside of his coat. I'm going to do it now. I have to. He began to fumble with the gold buttons on the front of his coat. At that moment, Tenderfoot, who had been hunkered low, panting next to Black, created a diversion. She tipped onto her side and gave a short, guttural howl. Oh no! The swoop Theo's heart gave had nothing to do with the boy or the gun. Tenderfoot! What's happening? Be quiet, said Theo. She needs to concentrate. Why? Hush! Theo knelt. Is she taking some kind of test? She's giving birth. Theo laid a hand on the wolf's pulsing belly. Hush, Lapushka. Good girl. You're safe, I promise. She laid a hand on the wolf's muzzle to check her breathing. It was ragged, and Tenderfoot's muscles were tight, and there was urgency in her eyes. She was panting. Right now? Said the boy. He edged closer. How long will it take? Keep back, please. She doesn't need you breathing all over her. And yes, obviously, right now. The soldierly pose disappeared. The boy, who took a step forward, was just a boy. Can I watch? Only if you give me that gun. He hesitated. But you'll... I won't shoot you with it. Probably. But you can't be near us with a gun. Nobody is allowed to be near a pregnant wolf with a gun. She tried to say it as if it was a law, rather than something she had just made up. He barely hesitated before he picked up the gun and tossed it clumsily, barrel first, towards her. Theo caught it, sniffed it, and threw it deep into the wood. You can come this close, said Theo, and she drew a line in the snow, but not closer. She turned her back on him. The boy could wait. There were more important things. Tenderfoot's breath was coming in snuffles that blew the snow around her muzzle into flurries. The boy edged closer and knelt, 2 wolves' breaths away from the girl. Is it painful? He asked. She looks in pain. Of course it's painful, said Theo, but less bad than for humans, Mama says, because their heads are smaller. Can I do anything to help? I'm Ilya, by the way. No, not yet anyway. You can stay back. You're supposed to say your name now. The other soldiers say you and your mother are socially malnourished. Can't you just be quiet? This is important. I know your name anyway. It's Theodora. Theo ignored him. She ignored anyone who called her by her full name. It was a policy. Tenderfoot gave a breathy howl where she lay, and a tiny parcel of fur and slime landed on the snow. Theo held her breath, unsure what to do. The parcel was not moving. Tenderfoot twisted round to sniff at it, licked it. Then she turned away. The noise that came from her was more of a wail than a growl. What now? Said Ilya. I don't know. All right? Theo picked up the little parcel of wet fur. It was much too small and much too still. She licked the hem of her cloak and very gently rubbed the furry body. Nothing happened. She touched it with a fingertip. There was no heartbeat. Is everything working? Said Ilya. No, it's not, said Theo. Frantically she opened the pup's tiny mouth with her little finger and breathed in a puff of air. It did not move. Already the body was growing cold. What happened? They've been feeding her the wrong things. She dug her nails into her palms. It's dead. Dead? He looked stricken. Already? Can't we? No. It was dead in the womb. It's too small, you can see. She ducked her head, hiding behind her hair so he couldn't see that her face was wet. People don't know how to feed wolves. Idiots. There was more straining coming from the wolf and a strange whining noise. Theo had never heard a wolf make. Wait, there's another. Be quiet while she pushes. Theo stroked Tenderfoot's head and peered at her hind end. Well done, Lapushka. Steady now. You can do this. What's happening? Hissed Ilya. Which part of "be quiet or the wolves will eat you" have you not understood? Said Theo. Her chest was burning. She realised she'd been holding her breath. She gulped in air and then, "Sorry, I'm not." She needs quiet. She stroked the fur along the wolf's spine and prayed to whichever saint took care of wolf pups and vulnerable snuffling things. Tenderfoot strained again, and the lump that slid into Theo's waiting hands was bigger and wriggling hard. "It's alive," said Ilya. "I can see it. It's alive." Theo beamed down into the snow. "Yes, but don't jinx it. Wait for a moment." She set the pup down by Tenderfoot's mouth. The new mother licked it clean. Wolves do not purr, but they do vibrate with pleasure. Tenderfoot was vibrating now. She laid the parcel on Theo's knees. Ilya gave a squeak. "Look at that!" The parcel moved. It gave a cough, no louder than the rustling of paper. Theo could feel, through her skirt, its fingernail-sized beating heart. "Oh," said Theo. She bent her head to whisper, "Welcome to the world, little one." It was like being given a kingdom. "Did you see that?" said Ilya. "She gave him to you." It's what they do in a pack. They raise the pups together. The look on the boy's face was so exactly like Black's when food was nearby that Theo was startled. It was hungry and full of longing. She shifted in the snow to make room for him. "Here, come and see." "It's blind," he gasped. "Theodora, help it." "It's not blind. I mean, it's supposed to be. They don't open their eyes for about 10 days. The pup's hips stuck up in 2 sharp points, as did his shoulders. He was black with white toes and with smudges of grey on his chest. His eyes were closed, and as soon as Theo placed him at Tenderfoot's nipple, his paws began to scrabble at her stomach, blindly coaxing out the milk. Theo laughed. It looked, irresistibly, like an old man dancing. Ilya put out a hand to touch the pup, then hesitated, retracted it, sat on it. "Look at that," he breathed. "The cub's drinking, isn't it?" "Pup," said Theo. "Wolf babies are pups." "No more flesh on him than a kitchen table," said Ilya. She stared and he blushed. "That's what my mother said about me when I was born. Before she died, not afterwards. My father said it would be useful to have a thin child, less to feed." He moved closer. Theo wasn't sure what to say. The boy wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the pup, who was accidentally tasting snow for the first time. The pup sneezed, tiny, doll-sized sneezes. She said, "I'm Theo, actually, not Theodora." "Theo. Can I touch it, Theo?" "Him. He's a boy. It's really up to Tenderfoot, not me." But Ilya's face was so hopeful it hurt her chest to look at him, and she shrugged. "If you make sure she can always see your hands, she won't bite. They get nervous when they can't see both your hands." He quivered from boots to cap as he stroked the pup. Theo watched him. His eyelashes were so blonde they were almost invisible, and they were covered in snow. There was a scar on one eyelid. "The General wanted us to shoot this?" he asked. "He said wolves were vicious." "He's afraid," said Theo. "Fear is as dangerous as hatred sometimes. Animals know that." "But look at his claws," said Ilya. Theo looked. They were short and thin as fingernail clippings. Ilya touched the pup's paws with the tip of his little finger. "You couldn't shoot a wolf pup," he said. "It's only just begun." They sat, wolves and children jumbled together, for hours. They didn't speak much. They just watched the pup staggering between his mother's nipples and clambering over the mountain of her side and sliding off into the snow. It was dusk when Theo roused her pack. Tenderfoot lifted her cub into her mouth and looked to the girl for directions. "We have to go," said Theo. "Good night." "Where are you taking her?" Theo hesitated. "You won't tell?" "Never. Really, I swear, Theo." "I'm taking her home." My house. She can sleep inside it if she wants to, or in the porch. Will they see us between the wood and the house? No, I'm covering these 6 miles. He looked down at the gold buttons on his sleeve. Can I come back? Won't they beat you? He shrugged. Can I come back? All right, yes, if you want. And help with the wilding? It's not easy. Theo fought down her grin. It was too early, she reckoned, to be grinning at soldiers. You can, but not if you bring a gun, and only if you promise never to tell what you saw, on pain of death by wolf. That seems fair enough, he said. I mean, and the city twang she had heard before was in his voice again, if you had to die, at least that way would be exciting.